Yes, yeah, okay, yeah. So I wanted to be riding the wave of like new forward-thinking, cutting-edge projects because mixing old and new together is just magic, I find. I think it's really, really quite something, and I'm just so blessed, I think, to be part of that.
Hi, my name is Carole Berubé. I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Inou from Matimekush. I grew up on the north coast of Quebec, and Matimekush is pretty much the community with who I relate the most. My family is there, and I don't go often though; it's pretty far. But now I live in Montreal, and I started my artist new life not too long ago. I've created a page called Matuishtin on Facebook and Instagram, where I create pieces with birch bark and beads. So the things that I'm wearing at the moment, it's exactly what I'm creating on this page. And this workshop with Craig reminded me of like all the other techniques can be done with beads and with like creating geometry. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So Project Nadakanu is pretty much like something that I've been dreaming for a while to try to connect the art and trying to connect also like digital media, something that I've been trying to do by myself, but I think workshops is something so important. This platform will be available for anyone who download it, and if you have it on your community, you can like still watch videos even if you don't have internet. So I
Mm,
find it so important, so needed at the moment, and can't wait to see what else can be done with this.
yeah, same.
Okay, so let's begin. First, I should show you an example of what it is that we'll be making and what I'll be showing you guys. So, can you see this? Can everyone see this? Okay, so now here's what I'm going to do with it. See? This is a warped pentagon. And it's a pentagon because of how many beads are in the center as they start. So if you can look closely, you'll see that the start of the piece is red, and I marked it that way so that everyone could see how it's constructed. As you can see here, the blue is what we use to make the piece bigger, and the blue beads here represent a technique called an increase. It increases the size of the piece that we're doing. And if you can look here across, you'll see that I have these white beads here, and this is what we would call the peyote stitch. This is what allows us to travel across from point to point, and the increases allow us to make the piece bigger. So this piece like looks complicated, but it actually isn't. It really, really isn't, and I'm going to show you how we're going to make it. So the first thing we need to do is to get an arm's length of thread out, at least an arm's length of thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread my needle. It's a bit tiny. I know you can't really see it from here, but what's important to note about threading the needle is the fact that you don't put any knots on this thread. There's not going to be any knots that you put on there because you don't need them. Not yet. And what it means for this is that we can call this thread, this long thread here, a working thread. And the other ending part of it is the tail, and I'll show you why. So without further ado, I'm going to now start us off with our start. And I'm taking 5 beads with my needle, and I've colored it white so that you guys can see what I'm doing. So now I'm going to tie them in a circle. So I'm gonna take my thread all the way down through it. I'm gonna take the thread, keep going. Now what I want to do is to leave a little thread at the end. That's called the tail thread, and we can't cut it right away because we still need it in order to construct the piece. So I'll show you how we use our tail thread in order to do that. So what we do is just tie a couple of overhand knots. Really simple stuff. Super duper simple. Oops, there we go. So that's what I'm going to do right now to secure the circle together. So that we can start building. So I usually like to do at least 2 or 3 because I want to make sure I'm secure. Oh, and when it comes to taking these techniques home and using them on your own beads, you'll have to remember to modify your techniques a little bit, because the beads that I'm using here are these like big giant ones called Hama beads, and they're cylinder beads. They're kind of too small to see, but like kids would use those to like glue them together to make pictures and stuff like that. But I'm using them to be able to teach you guys. So when you go home and you have like say delicate beads or you have seed beads or something, these techniques are still going to work on it. They still the fundamentals of them are what count. And so you want to modify your techniques to make sure that you don't overweave your original like smaller beads and they end up breaking on you. Sometimes when you go around in a circle, you might only need to do it like just the weaving part and not tie a knot. Other people still would. It's down to personal preference at that point. But definitely the fundamentals are what remain. So I've tied my knot into my circle of beads. As you can see here, it's pretty tiny. And now I'm ready to start building the piece. So what we need to do is we need to start with increases first. 2 beads at a time through every spot that I can go. So for my increases, I'm going to use the color purple so that you guys can see it. So I pick up 2 beads with my needle, and what I'm going to do is I am going to take the needle, go through the bead like this, come through, and I pull, and it brings me to something like this. I'm going to repeat this process going all the way around this little piece that I tied up, our little starting point. So when I do that, it gives me the ability to start again. But there's a particular way that you need to start the next row, and I'll show you. It's a very subtle thing that you need to watch out for as a beater when you're doing this kind of stitch, because it's easy to miss. Really, really easy. So this particular spot I'm talking about is called the jump point, because you gotta jump to the next level. So I'm just finishing up putting my increases on my piece, and then I'm going to show you how to pass this little subtle spot. It's super easy, but it's hard to, it can be easy to miss too at the same time. I keep the tension tight first, just to secure the base, because the base is very easy to come apart if you don't secure it properly. So with these big ones, I tend to pull it a bit tighter. But if you're using 11s and stuff at home, like your delicas, you want to back off a little bit on the tension. You don't want to like super, super tight, but just enough that you'll, so I'd say medium tension. I've come to the end of the first round, and now I need to go to the second round. So here's how I do it. I have my final 2 beads that I need in order to go up. But as you can see, there's another purple spot right here where I need to come out of. So this is how I do it. I'm going to show that camera here, like that. So what I do is I take the bead, I take my needle and I go through the white bead and also the purple bead that's right on top of there. And that's what you call the jump point, because I jump through 2 beads in order to get to the top again. When I get to the top again, I can start again. So I have done that. Now I'm pulling it through like this. And now the first part of this piece is complete. You see that? So now we're ready to begin the next part, the peyote stitch. It's super easy. But first, what we need to do is to do another increase technique on the top, because we need to start growing the piece. So I'm gonna grab 2 beads, like so. I'm gonna put that through here, and now here's where the peyote stitch comes in. Now that I've come out, I have a space right between, you see, right there and right there. I need to fill it with something, and I'm just gonna use an orange just so that it's bright, so you guys can see it. So I just go through that purple bead like that with my orange bead on. I bring it up. Oops, hang on. Yeah, sometimes that happens. gets tangled, don't worry. So putting that thread back on, it can be difficult. So make sure you have good lighting sources wherever you're at home. When you're doing beading, it's super important to have good lighting and being able to see your work. My peyote stitch is coming right at like this. See? Going through that orange bead like that. All right. See? Now it's starting to grow. Oops. So I continue this way, going all around, just filling in the space in between, putting the increase on the top in order to grow the piece. And these are parts that take time. After that, once you have the some techniques down, you can go pretty far. Actually, even as a first time beater and everything like that, it can actually take you pretty decently far. And soon I will show you how to do attaching the thread and detaching the thread. So, but first I'll just work on this one a little bit, just so that I can show some people what is going on. I'm going to make my way around my piece again, and then I'll come back around for the next round. It's kind of hard working with two different cameras. I'm going through like the third round now, just kind of building. Oops.
Okay, perfect.
So I got some peyote stitch going on here. You're doing a herringbone increases on where the purple is in order to grow it, and the orange is the peyote. So as to travel across, yeah. So I'm just doing that. I'm slowly working here, and we're slowly growing. You see, it's already starting to move. See, and that's how when you start your construction off in certain ways, the beads will eventually respond to that. Like this one right here is 5, just for like the simplicity. But you can do different numbers too. You can do 7, you can do 9, you can do 11, 13, and so on. If you want, I've done it. It's really fun. Yeah. So, yeah, and pretty soon I'm gonna be needing to attach a thread. And then I'll show you how to attach and detach the thread on these pieces, because it can get pretty tricky. I gotta say, if you don't know certain principles, I guess the first of which I would say would be to keep things simple. We don't need to go on crazy paths within the beadwork, because this is another technique. It's like going through the beads you already have in the work in order to travel to someplace new, in order to tie knots or to go back to where you were. It can be daunting if you're not quite used to it, but I'll show you exactly what I'm doing, so that hopefully it'll help you understand where I'm coming from. But all good things come in time, kind of thing, right? And yeah, so pulling through, and I'm tightening it a little more now. But once you're working with delicas, you'll see that you won't need to pull it super tight every time you bead a bead. The tightness of the beads, or rather the how the delicas are themselves, will be pretty strong, and you'll see how much tension exactly you'll need, because it's, I would say, dependent on the project that you're using at the time, like what the project is. Yeah, and oftentimes the beads themselves will like kind of like in a weird way, I suppose, tell you through your hands like, okay, maybe I'll back off on the tension here, or maybe I need to loosen here, or maybe I need to tighten here, sort of thing. It's not like a one size fits all sort of thing. Okay, So getting pretty close to needing to change my thread. Yep. So with that in mind, I've just been kind of choosing random colors and stuff like that. I haven't really been putting much thought into my color selection. That's a deliberate thing on my part. I know there's expert pattern makers out there who can really start writing with this sort of thing, but here I'm just here to show you guys how to put it together, and you guys will be able to take it from there, be able to do all sorts of cool stuff with it, I'm sure. I'm just going to do my best to show you how to keep going, how to sustain, how to, so that's my role today. I hope that I can accomplish it. So I'm just going to keep on rolling. Let's see. So push the needle through, pull, and then click. It's in place. That's what I love that's what I love about cylinder beads, is that there's a certain satisfaction every time you go through one to the next to the next. Yeah. If anyone takes joy in life from simple things, this would be one of them. Yeah, I know I'm one of them for sure. So I'm just continuing along here, and I'm very much getting closer. I might end my thread after the next round of beads that I'm gonna put around, just so I can get to showing you the technique, so that I can cover my bases. So it's gonna be coming right up. Let's see. I have so many beads. I was given an entire bucket of beads. Can you believe that? I'm lucky. An entire bucket. And it just brings back old memories of that time when I was working with Nico. Even before Nuit Blanche too. Just kind of stopped by and started learning some stuff. I even learned my first flat peyote stitch from Nico. It was pretty special. And now I've used that same stitch to make other fantastic sort of necklaces and statement pieces and things like that. Because I do like to make those things, not just shapes or anything like that, but actual wearable jewelry too. I eventually want to get to a place where I can actually have some original stuff out there in the world. So I suppose you could call this the first iteration of that. So let's bring that forward. All right. So now I said I'm going to begin the process of ending my thread. It's a little long right now, but I'll just do it so that you guys have the visual example of what's happening. So I'm taking my I'm just going like normal. Take my increase through the jump portal and go through. So now I'm on top, and now I'm going to continue. But here's the rub. I'm going to go through once. So here's what I meant when I said that we have to sometimes pass the needle through the beadwork in order to achieve a certain goal. So the goal we're trying to do right now is to end our thread. So we need to secure the thread onto the piece so that it won't unravel on us when we're trying to do something new. So here's how we do it. What I need to do is, I don't need to put any bead on the thread. I just take the needle and the thread and I put it through in there, on the inside of there. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to, okay. See where I put the needle? I put it through inside the beadwork. I'll show the camera here. So I'm starting by putting my needle within the beadwork, and I wrap around to secure it around at least 4 beads, because it helps to it kind of knots upon itself, I suppose you could say. Yeah. So I'm just gonna wrap around that. I took 4 beads. I'll show the camera there. Now if you can see here, oops, hang on. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm putting the needle through. There, I pull. And now I go back around. Again, I change direction. I come back through that yellow bead. And see that? I'm coming through again, up, like that. And doing this creates a circle around the beads that are already there, tightening them and securing them together. So I'm going to advance again. I'm going to go through this yellow bead that's up here and the pink one, like that. So you can see that. I'll show the camera here. So I just repeat that process. It's all I'm doing here is everything is a series of repeating techniques. So I just flip it across like that. Yeah. Okay. See that? I'm going through it again. Show the camera. And I come back around. It's going in a circle like that a couple times to secure the beads. This thread that I'm using is a little thick, so that I can actually do this. But if your thread is a bit thin, don't be afraid to tie a few overhand knots or on a thread within your beadwork, because attaching it to itself is a very, very beneficial thing to do, because it helps to strengthen the beadwork. All right, so I'm feeling pretty secure about my thread ending, so I'm gonna prepare to cut it off. So when you feel secure, and this is another thing, when you're doing this, you don't want to overweave your beads, because especially if you're at home, you're using size 11 delicas, it's super easy to overweave, and then a bead just breaks. And I've been there many times. I have experienced emotions because of it, so you need to be careful when it comes to weaving in the thread, so to avoid that. With these Hama beads, it's a little easier because the holes are just so gigantic. But with your beads at home, especially if you're using sizes smaller than 11, you need to be very careful. Oftentimes, all you need to do is just wrap around the first 4 beads, and then even the next one after that, and you're good. So I'm cutting my thread now. The thread is secure, and I feel ready to do it. Snip. All right, so as you can see, I've got that turquoise bead on there, and that was my last starting point. So when it comes to putting the thread on again, it's sort of the same process, but reversed. So with that said, I'm going to show you now how to attach the thread to the beadwork. So I'll show that to the other camera here. Again, it's a thing that will require time. It requires repetition, practice, you know. Don't beat yourselves up if you miss something or don't get something right away. It's, how should I say it? The knowledge is out there. So, when you're attaching a thread, something that's really important and really helpful for you guys out there watching and listening is to put on something called a stop bead on your thread. And a stop bead is just a bead that you bring down to towards the end, towards the tail of your thread, and you just do a wrap around it once. And all its function is to secure your thread while you're wrapping it around and weaving it into the piece. And then when you're done, you just kind of rip it off and weave in the tail end of the thread into the piece, and then you're ready to go. So here's how I do it. So I got the bead on the thread, and now I'm pulling it down, and I'm going to go through it to wrap my thread around it, like so. See that? It's just a really simple, just overhand thing, and that's all you need. Yeah. So I just need to make sure that my needle path ends up on the last spot that I was at. So I need to start at a couple of beads before this. And this is how I do it. So what you need to do is go through the pink and yellow beads here. Well, that's what I'm doing actually. I'm going through the pink and yellow beads like so. So that's the first one. I'm going through the ones that are in the beads, within the beadwork. Show the camera here. And so I'm pulling through like that. And now I just change my direction a little bit here. If you can, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see. So now I'm going through the purple and the orange. 1 second. Orange, purple, like that. So, hang on, lost my, fell out. So, going around. All right. So now I changed my direction and went through the other ones. I can't really show this that well, but anyway, gonna go up again, and then I pull and I suck the thread into the beadwork, and now I'm on my way to being securely attached. Oops. I'll show this other camera. See? So now I just repeat that again. I'm just gonna go like that. Because all you need to do after this is just add a few more rows, and you can just cut it and it's done. Yeah, so we got at least another hour, and I'm sure I'll be done probably before then. So now I'm going back up through my beadwork again. I'm going through the beadwork, not adding anything. So I pull again, and awesome. So now I'm going to advance a bit here. After tying in a knot one more time. Sometimes the thread just does that. It has a mind of its own. So this is, so now I'm secure. And now I just need to travel through the beads in order to go to the spot that I need to be at. So I just take my needle and thread and go through here. Right? The same path we took to get there. Now I just travel through the beads. Travel through. Like so. Traveling through the beadwork, folks. Go like that. Go up. Through that. And then like that. See that? Now I'm back out through that green bead. You guys see that? Alright, so now I've attached the thread. And I'm ready to bead again. See? I'm on the working side. So my next bead is going to be purple. Or not purple, turquoise. What I usually like to do after I got the attachment going is I like to work on the tail thread. Because it sometimes gets annoying having to constantly put the tail thread out of the way when you put in a new thread. So what I like to do is weave it within the work and then cut it, just so that it frees up my hands a little bit in order to continue in a more efficient manner. You're just gonna have to bear with me for a second here. Sometimes it takes a while to get the needle on the thread. Thread on the needle? Come on. Okay, yes. Yeah, and to weave in the tail thread is the same kind of techniques as weaving it in. It's just you go around within the beadwork, you weave it in, you make sure that you have security, then you just cut it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going around in circles. Round and round as I go. It doesn't actually take long to weave in the tail thread. It's just a matter of security, really. You want your work to be secure. That implies it, having, I don't know, just making sure that you got your ducks in a row. Alright. Now I've woven in that tail thread and I'm ready to cut it. Hang on. 1 second. I just need to get something here. Okay. Radio. Continuing on. So, I'm gonna go for a few more rounds around the beadwork, and then after that, should be done. Should be good. Just as a basic little tutorial. So I have sometimes a lighter in order to melt the end of the thread, and helps me out. But when it comes to your beadwork at home and you're using different kinds of beads, definitely have a pair of pliers handy to pull the needle out the beadwork, and have a pair of scissors handy in order to cut the thread, and have a lighter ready in order to melt the end if need be. These are tools that I'm sure you can find at different places. My little scissors here was part of another little kit, but I just ended up repurposing it. The power just went out. Well, it almost went out here just a while ago. That was crazy. Maybe we'll get some thunder today. Alright, so I'm continuing on with my work. As you can see, I'm doing my peyote stitch now, and I'm approaching an increase. So what do? I put another 2 purple beads. So back to where I was. Let's flip that around. Good thing for this beadwork, it's movable. So now I'm doing my increase here. See, I'm on the corner, so I need 2 beads. See that? I need 2. That's what I have here. So I just pull it through like that. Ta-da! Got it. So now we're continuing on. Excuse me a moment. Turquoise bead. Alright, more peyote stitch. Go like so. Go like so. Since I've become like a experienced beater, sometimes I'll economize my use of motion when I thread my bead. I have an arm that comes out like this, right? So what if I just aimed that as I'm pulling, and then I can hook another one right on there as I do it. This is some more tricks you pick up as you bead. As you continue to do this practice, you'll find ways of going through it for you that will help you, or become a thing that you do when you do this practice. Everyone has their own little tricks. Everyone's got their own little, subtle wisdoms and little gems that help the process along, and is a benefit, I think, to the collective. So I'm just plugging along here, and I might do like another row, and then I'll end it. I'll show you guys how to end it. And it's super easy. It's the same exact thing as how I attached and detached the thread. It's just the same technique repurposed. And after this is done, we can go over some other questions and stuff too. And I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going along, got my turquoise, purple, and turquoise peyote stitch going on with the purple herringbone increase. Like that's what the increase comes from a stitch called herringbone, which causes those like increases. And depending how you use them, you can make all these sorts of different shapes. Like how I'm doing a warped pentagon, but it's like I was saying before. Depending how you are clever with how you start, you can make all sorts of weird and crazy stuff. I've personally seen some really out there stuff. Okay, so now we are gonna get close to the end. So I'm just going to finish this row, start another, and it's done. Because I guess want to not keep you here forever. Know what I mean? So what I'm gonna do for the last row, because I want to be a little fancy, I want to put on like an edging. I want to put an edge for it to make it look pretty. You know, you want to embellish it. You want to fill in the corners a little bit. So with this last row, that's exactly what it's supposed to be for. And I'll make and all I need to do is just make one little tweak to the same technique that I'm doing here, and I'll be well on my way to finishing. So now I'm jumping up. Now, since the piece is built a bit, you can see how I'm missing a spot, eh? You see that? You see how I'm missing that spot? But look, there's 2 beads here instead of I'm sorry, 4 beads instead of the usual 2. So that means I have a jump point. You see? Because all I have to do is just bend it down a little bit, get my needle through. 1 second. Okay. All right. See that? I'm through. I went through the purple beads, and then I just pull. Oops. I pull the bead through the jump, and now look. It's even. It's perfect. So now, here's what I'm going to do in order to start my finishing row. So what I need to do is I need to pick up 1 bead. I'm picking up 1 instead of 2, even though I'm on this corner. And the reason for doing that is to finish off the piece. So I'm just picking up 1 bead, I'm passing it through, and this is called since I'm not making the piece bigger, I'm keeping it like the same. And because of its shape, since I pulled it through, you see that? It came to a point like that. You guys see that? So that's what's called a point round. This is a round you would use in order to either finish your work or to build on top of it. But we're going to use this technique to finish the piece. So all the difference is that you just put 1 bead in the corner instead of 2. And it helps if you choose a different color too, just to accentuate and embellish the piece that you've been working on. So that's the main difference between all the techniques we've been doing and a finishing technique is the amount of beads that you use. Just like that. You see that? So now I can continue. I'm just going to use these white beads in order to show you guys that it's my embellishing round, it's my finishing round, and we'll end it there. So I'm just going through. I'm just doing my peyote stitch like that. Oops, show the camera here. And so I just peyote stitch the white beads through like that. I'm going through all the way to that end of the line. So I pull that through, and now here's where I put that point round. See, I have another purple spot here that I need to put my point round in like that. Just go through, pull, and there you go. Got something. Point round. So now I can continue. So I'm very much approaching the end of this little stint here. Oops. So I'm just plugging away here. And once you get used to this peyote stitch and stuff like that, you'll be plugging away too. I have full confidence in your ability to do so. Because I've done it. I'm doing it now, and I'll do it again. You can too. Got my point round in there. Yeah. Like that. Like so. And sometimes your thread might pop out, it might not. These are huge beads though, so they just kind of done that. But on the little beads, not so much, because you would only even need to just weave through it, because the strength of the weave itself would not allow the beads to slip. And I'm talking size 11 beads, like size 11 delicas. That's after that, the dynamics of weaving in your thread with those beads becomes different, and so you just need to be cognizant of these little subtle changes, which is why I've mentioned at the beginning to be sure to modify these techniques for the beads that you're using, whether they're seed beads or not, because breaking a bead in the middle of your piece is just no fun. It really isn't. Okay, so now I'm going to be finishing the piece. I am homing in on my my jump point. As you can see, I have a jump point there, that little weird little space. So now I'm going to jump up and we're going to be finishing this piece. So it's the same as before. You jump up through 2 beads in order to get yourself in position to start the next round. So hang on a second. I'm just going to show this on the camera. So I have a needle going through the purple bead, going through that purple bead, pulling it. Okay, and then of course I bring my needle through that white bead up there. See? All right, now it's time to weave the thread in. So this is what we do. We travel through the beads that are already there. So I'm going to go through the purple. And now I'm going to go into the white and the turquoise like this. Yeah. I'm going through there because I need to go within the beadwork. Show this camera too. So that's what I'm doing. I'm wrapping myself I'm wrapping myself around the beads in a manner like a circle, because it will, once you get a thread to cross in on itself, it becomes that much stronger when it's being secured. So that's what we want to do. So I'm going to repeat that again. Oops. Yeah. So see, I'm up on this way, right? But now I'm going like this. That's what I need to do with the beads. So I go down through the side like this. Hang on. Like I said, sometimes it likes to you know, mess around with you. So I've encountered a tangle. Like, no process is perfect, right? So I'm just gonna untangle that right now. It shouldn't take me long. I've gotten used to doing this. Gotten quite used to it, actually. Okay, so back at it. Yeah, and that's can be a hard part, I think, for beaders to stick with beading. Is like when their stuff gets all knotted or something happens or whatever. This is where you need your perseverance, and patience, and determination. Because if you don't have those things, why are you even doing it? Because if you don't have them, you're gonna just not have a good time. But luckily for us, this is a practice where we can work on all those things simultaneously. So now I'm just advancing. I'm repeating my technique again. See that? I pass through and pull it. Now I just flip it and I do that again. So I'm just gonna post it up through again. Now as you can see, my needle is in a, oops, hang on, sorry about that, hang on. Okay. Okay, so now as we can see, I posted my needle through, and I also do it like that to make circles around the beads. One sec, I'm just gonna, yeah, all right. And when you're pulling, you want to make sure that your thread path is clear, because stuff like this could happen, and you could have a thread that shows outside of your beadwork, and that's definitely something you don't want to have, because you're going to notice it, and you're going to be like, oh man, you know. So just take care when you're doing this to make sure that thread path is clear, so that you don't have to go back and stress out over it. So pulling it down. See that? Pull it up like that. So I am going to continue this for a bit while longer, and then my piece is done. It's just like that. So let's see. Go through. Flip it like that. Even when you're pulling in on the thread, it can knot up on you just because it likes to twist. So sometimes what you may need to do is buy yourself something called a thread conditioner, and what that is just a sort of actually I think I have one. But basically, it's a piece of beeswax. And like a piece of plastic, and you run your thread through that. And what this does, it helps keep your thread kind of straight from it wrapping around itself and tangling up and whatnot. With cotton threads and other threads like that, it has a tendency to do that. That's just, I don't know why it does that. There's probably some science behind it that I'm not aware of, but like, it can be a little annoying when it constantly does that. So I believe this thread conditioner to be a worthy thing to invest in if you're using that kind of thread. But the reason why I like to use Fireline is not only because it's strong, but it doesn't tangle as easily. It's like straight. So when you're buying thread, be very discerning about which thread you're buying, how strong it is, and whether it will tangle or not. Miyuki thread is also really good to have. It's supple, it's strong, and it stays straight too. So yeah, that's just my little bit about thread. But I'm going to be finishing this up now. So let's continue. I'm just gonna go one more time around because I'm feeling really secure about the the weaving that I've done with the thread. So I'm gonna pull it through like that. Go down like that. Can someone answer that question in the chat? Pull it up. I can't really see it right now. Okay. And one more. Just one more. Just to be sure. Hang on. Someone... Okay, yeah. Right on. Okay. So, here we go, guys. Final knot. And because this is the Hama beads, I just exposed a thread here that I'm just going to use as a point to tie another knot, just for the added security, just to make sure that the piece will stay functioning as I want it to. But with your delicas, with like the small stuff, you won't need to do this technique. This one is necessary because of the size and the dynamics of the beads that I'm working with. But as I said, you'll have to adjust accordingly, according to your materials. Okay, that's one. All right, and I am done. I am done. Yay. So now I'm cutting my thread. So my my secure weaving of the thread through the piece is done. Now I'm ready to cut. So here's what I do to get a good cut. What I do is the piece is like on my mat, and what I do is I take the thread and I just pull it a bit. I need to put a bit of tension on the thread. And then what I do is I cut it. Because it was tense, it was stretched out a bit. And when you cut it, it shrinks a bit. So it shrinks itself a little bit within the beadwork. And now, look at that. See that? We did this, folks. I just hope that this tutorial helped. I know we've been cut off from a bit of our tools here, you know, but I really hope that I managed to get some points across, even though it was hard to see.
All right.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Enjoy the
Thanks,
rest of your
everyone.
day.
Good
Okay.
job.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.